piece of tape across him, letting you know nobody's to sit there. So I just sat beside that chair, and sure enough, Quentin Tarantino sat right next to me for the movie.
Whoa.
So the fans that came to meet me ended up sitting right in front, and I have a pretty infectious laugh. I have kind of like a Burt Reynolds laugh, and I really get going. And I kept laughing at everything Kurt Russell was doing in the movie. And we get to the intermission, and as soon as the lights go up, Tarantino turns over to me and he goes, "You are the only person I've watched this with that actually laughs at the right parts. This is great." and he gets up and he goes off somewhere, like to get a drink or something. And the fans sitting in front of me turn around and go, "Dude,
pocket party."
And we're back. Hey, everybody. I am so delighted, so excited to have a very special guest. You know him from YouTube and many other things. Please welcome the one and only Jordan the Lion.
Hey, Darren, thanks. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm actually one of your listeners, so it's kind of fun to get to do this. Hang out with you.
Oh, man. Thank you. Thank you. I always like how you start all your videos. You're like, well, hello there. It's like a welcoming kind of thing, you know?
It's my Mr. Rogers. That was like, as a kid, what I love, Mr. Rogers kind of like welcomed you into his show and into his world for the day. So that's always my, like, hey, you're welcome here if you want to be here.
That's great, man. You know, what's interesting is I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time. I'll tell you that when I first heard about you, and this is what it's really a trip to me. I was standing in the parking lot of the Comedy Store about, I want to say 3 years ago. It'd been a while. And I was maybe 4. I was talking to Sam Tripoli, and we were talking about YouTube and just comedy and where it's going and, you know, how to get ourselves out there. And he was like, I got this buddy. And it was you, but I didn't know. He's like, he does a travel show, and he just kept banging out the videos, and he just didn't give up, man. He just kept putting them out and kept working. And eventually it caught on, and now he's able to travel. And I was picturing, like, I don't know what I was picturing. Like when they say travel vlogger, I was picturing like drones and like Paris and just people that are, I don't know. It wasn't what I was picturing. And so then, and I was like, oh, it's so cool. I like the message of what he was saying. And then just randomly I would hear, you know, I was watching YouTube one night, and I stumbled on one of your videos, and then I got sucked in. I was like, oh, this is so cool. It was like an Andy Griffith one. I think he might've been in Toluca Lake. And then you know how it is. Once your person puts out good content, you're like, oh, what's this video about? What's this one? But then in the meantime, I kept hearing your name from, I think, Steve Simone and a few other people. And then it just clicked. I'm like, wait a second. I mean, that internet guy that I'm watching, you guys know him? And then I think I saw like some Jeff Scott vlogs from the Comedy Store. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I may have met him in real life and not even known. Like, anyways, I'll probably edit all this out, but I just wanted to say how I'll leave it in. How much how weird the world is. And then now you're on my show. So thank you.
Oh, dude, it's, well, you know, my life for years was kind of stagnant. I came to Los Angeles to play music, and I got, you know, I did it for like 10 years. And then just one day I just felt like I had done what I wanted. I felt like I had wrote the songs and said what I wanted to say. And I was kind of like not sure what to do next. And I would go and hang out at the Comedy Store in the dead years. And that was like the birth of podcasting. So it was kind of cool. I was listening to like Joey Diaz and Sam Tripoli and a lot of these guys. And you go to the Comedy Store and nobody else there knew they had a podcast. So they all ended up taking me under their wing. And even though I wasn't trying to be a comic, they all befriended me. And so at one point somebody called me and said, why are you not doing stand-up comedy? Like you should try it. And so I said, well, I like stand-up, but I don't like repetition of doing a same joke and working it and everything. And the person said, you know, it's not about being funny, or it's about knowing that you're interesting and that you have something to say. And so I started trying stand-up at open mics for about a month, and also simultaneously started doing this vlog just because I felt like, as someone who wanted to be I wanted to be like a character actor, and I just couldn't get I couldn't get someone to let me in the room to see me. And for me, I just thought, well, I have this cool town that I live in. Why not try and like show some of it? And I realized quickly I didn't want to do stand-up, but everything that went into being a stand-up, which was the going and trying every night, you know, getting on stage and making mistakes so you learn, all that stuff, I just said, well, if I do it in vlogging, if I like the one thing I don't have to pay for it, I have a camera phone, I can go out and see all the cool things that people take for granted that live here. And that's where it all started. And I was friends with Sam Tripoli. We used to walk our dogs at the park together. And one day I said to him, I'm like, Sam, it seems to me that comedians, the best way to get people into your comedy is for them to know more about you. Why aren't people not on YouTube? Like, why are more stand-up comedians not on YouTube where they can be themselves and just take questions and live stream? And Sam got to thinking and like, man, I unleashed a monster.
I know you're right, because he's so good at it. He really is. He's almost like a mentor to me, because every now and then I'll dip down and be like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't, you know, and then he's just like, no, dude. And he'll always hit me with some wisdom, whether it's, you know, make a daily list of gratitude or just something that's like, you know, and or make your notes that week. So every, you know, when you put your podcast out, you're like, these are the 7 things I want to hit. Like, he just hit you with that energy. I remember my first live stream was with him, and it, like I said, it was about 3 years ago. And he's like, dude, you could do it on your phone right now. And I'm like, right now? We were actually doing an Armenian gig in Glendale at this fundraiser. And he just takes my phone and he goes, see this, da, ba, ba, ba. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just like walking around. Hey, I'm in Glendale. And it was like you said, it's opening up this whole new world of, rather than waiting for someone else to give you a job or give you an opportunity, you sort of just, I mean, I'll go back to one of the, and then we'll get back to you. We'll go back to one of the vlogs that I really connected with you, with you. It was great. It was like a very simple vlog, and it was like you're walking your dog Jaw, and then for like the first half of it, or maybe less than half of it, and then you get in your car and you go where I like to go. You go over the Grapevine into Bakersfield, and you know, you hit a couple of, I don't know if they're called pawn shops or what those places are, though, that you looked at some cool stuff.
Yeah, over there where the Woolworth store is, the old
yes.
Oh yeah, that thrift mall. There's like thrift malls all over that area, untapped.
It's awesome. I mean, I love, you know, and then you went to Buck Owens Palace, which I would stop there with no cameras just to go there. And now I'm like, oh, maybe I should be vlogging this, you know, like, dude, I was like, and I love what you're doing, because it's not like, when I go back to the thing earlier, I used to picture vlogging like, you know, Casey Neistat, like I said, like quick cuts, lots of music, lots of production. And then you realize like, no, it doesn't, you don't need that. You just need, you know, whatever that person is interested in. And if they make it interesting, other people will be interested, you know? And it's like you come across very authentic, and I love that, because it's like, you're not faking it. You know, I used to be afraid of YouTube, not afraid, but like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do like, because I would just see what was very popular. Like, we're going to put a bunch of cereal in the bathtub. And I'm like, that's immature. I don't want to do that. But when a guy is like filming belt buckles or going with their grandpa to look at classic cars, I'm like, that's perfect. I like that slow moving, dude. I'm a big Elvis fan. I know that you're into Elvis. It's like, it's cool, man. You know, so if you ever do decide to just stand up, I mean, you're going to love it, I think.
Well, you know, one of the things that that kind of really drives me in this is the idea of, there's so much cool stuff to see. Sometimes you just have to be reminded that it's everywhere. I think a lot of us, especially this day and age, you have so much accessible at your fingertips. You get roped into feeling like you can experience it all there. And I'm just trying to remind people, you can see it here, but it's nothing like going there and getting that moment and getting to feel that moment. And, you know, a lot of it came from I had nothing, you know, in LA other than an interest in history and things like that. And I heard Steve Simone say on a podcast once before, where he said he was getting tired of auditioning, because he said all the auditions that I go to just to get even one job doesn't equal out to all the failures and all the gas I put in to get all this. And I started thinking to myself, you know, we have a free platform here on YouTube. And it just seemed to me with people tightening their budget on a lot of things, watching free TV was the way to go. And for me, I just took the Casey Neistat model, which was tell a good story and make the video as long as it needs to be. And for me, I just thought, you know, I'm going to put, whether they like me or not, you're going to have to see some of me if you want to see where the cool trip is. And hopefully if you don't like me, after time, I'll just grow on you. And that's always for my channel was like, it's a field trip and I'm your host, but it's not you watching me do it. It's me introducing what we're doing and then we're going together. I want to feel like a hangout.
That's good. And you do a great job at that, you know, and I'll plug another guy that I like to watch is Adam the Woo. And then one day I'm like, you guys, you guys know each other. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
It was really cool. When I got started, he was one of the people that I watched also. And I just, you know, you got to find, it's just like doing anything. You want to be inspired by someone while not replicating and duplicating what they were doing. And for me, I always loved, one of the biggest things in LA that I loved was like Vincent Price and the old movie history. Oh. So that was one of the things that I was like, I'm going to go and show these old movie stars' houses and explain why they're so much cooler to find out and read about than the people today. Because their stories are just so much more interesting in a time where you could get away with more and there was more hidden and more stories that are, you know, kind of now being uncovered. And for me, it was just like, hey, let's bring back what made coming to Hollywood cool, which was that era of Hollywood.
Absolutely. 100%, man. I'm like, yeah, I in fact, when it comes to some modern, like, you know, like, oh, you got to check out this thing. And sometimes I'll check it out. And a lot of times I'm disappointed. I'm like, you know what? There's already been so many great songs, movies, so much art that I haven't even really seen yet. Let me go back and see, you know. And I know people, you know, they're kind of busting my chops over this, but I've only watched one episode recently, but I actually had my wisdom tooth removed and I watched an episode of The Waltons and I was kind of pleasantly surprised. like I was like, it's actually kind of fun. Like, I mean, I haven't watched more episodes, but it was good, you know, things like that.
I've fallen down those kind of rabbit holes. That's how I found out about Dog the Bounty Hunter the first time. I remember like, you heard of this guy, you'd seen him in a bunch of places. And then I remember like, one time just stopping and watching one, I go, so this guy, his thing is he goes and finds people that have like an offense and then he preaches to them. Like he forces them to watch him smoke a cigarette and listen to his wisdom. I'm like, now that's a concept, you know, like it's like it's somebody that's such a character, it's hard to turn away from. And so that's like part of my thing is I go out traveling everywhere because I have a whole list of things I want to see, but the characters you meet along the way and the people that you meet in random towns, like you couldn't make them up on a page for a script. It's so cool to get that experience of being in like random towns day to day and just popping in for like gas and hearing like someone's life story in 5 minutes, you know, they'll tell you, trust me, they'll tell you.
You know, what's funny is I've been, you know, since I started vlogging and you know, and picking it up, it reminds me of my early days of stand-up, you know, like back when I first started, I used to, you know, carry like a notepad and a pen and I would be like, you know, my comedy antennas were up. Like, I'm like, oh, that's funny. Or I'd hear a conversation. I'd be like, why are they laughing? And what are they laughing at? And like, you just really are in tune with that. And then you start to learn, like when I'm talking to someone back, you know, when I started talking to somebody and they laugh at something, you know, I would be like, I take either a mental note or I physically would write it down and be like, oh, that's a good idea. And I find the same thing happens with, like you said, vlogging, or you just have to see what's around you and things that you may have driven past a million times. But once you start thinking like, you know what, that's pretty interesting. I wonder. And then do you do the same thing? Is that where your ideas come from?
I carry my camera almost all the time in my hand when I'm walking anywhere because I'm always ready to film something. I mean, and the same thing, my people that drive with me, they laugh because like my camera is always in my cup holder. It's like I hate to say it, but it's like my 6-shooter. I know when I see something, I know exactly the grip on that handle that I have. I know exactly where the buttons are. I know exactly how long it takes for the lens to retract. I know, I just, to me, it's like, boom, I'm ready. I got to capture. And I try and use as much of that stuff because you'd be amazed how many times I'll film some crazy thing like that and somebody will go, oh, dude, that's my grandma's house. Seriously, like so many times,
I'm just happy that we have technology, man, because when I did the road in the 90s, there wasn't, you're just out there. And then in the early 2000s, I remember I had like this thing called a flip camera, and it was this little white camera. They were pretty cheap, and you could record, and then the reason they called it a flip, I don't know if you know this, but you'd press a button and then boom, this USB thing would come out. So then you could just easily plug the USB and you could offload the files. And I'm like, this is great. And then they just discontinued it. But that's kind of when I started. And then
it was always so pixelated back then.
Yeah,
Now it's gotten good where you can actually have a good camera on your phone, and most people have a phone. They're, the way phones are made now, you have to upgrade them every couple of years anyway. So everybody always has a pretty decent phone.
Yeah, I had the idea that what I wanted to do, but I just didn't. The technology hadn't caught up, and my brain hadn't caught up with how to. This is probably even pre-YouTube. I remember performing in Texas, doing like a little tour. And I remember there was like a chili cook-off right outside of our hotel. And I was thinking like, oh, how can I capture this? And this is literally what I was going to do. I took Polaroid pictures of a few things, and then I audio recorded the people, but it just didn't come together. Nobody wants to see you know what I mean? Not like now, like you said, you got your 6. What kind of camera are you filming with these days?
I always use a Canon G7X Mark III. To me, it does a couple of things that I love. For one, it's kind of an all-purpose camera, so it does really well in low light. If you go out in the dark or whatever, it does a really good job at illuminating, but it also does a great job of when you start talking, say you're in a store with background noise, once you start talking, it does a great job of kind of muffling the stuff behind you. And it's small enough that I can slide it right in my front pocket. So like if I go to a concert, a lot of times, like when I used to go to Staples Center, they had a rule there. It's like no professional photography. And what they considered that was a retractable or a detachable lens or an SLR camera or a DSLR camera or a microphone, all that. This camera gets professional quality while looking like your normal mom's camera that, so it's crazy. I can take it in so many places and people don't think much of it. But when I get home, I have a professional quality video. It's great. I think I watched one of your Rick Springfield vlogs and I was like, wow, that's so cool. That was, do you, does that camera, just a side note, do you know if it records longer than 30 minutes? Because mine shuts off at 30. No, that one is one that it stops at the 30-minute mark, and that's the problem. Like Sam Tripoli was asking me for camera recommendations, and he ran into that problem because he was trying to film his set with that camera, and it just doesn't work that way. It's meant more for shorter clip photography type stuff, unfortunately. Yeah. But you're right, it is, because I have the Mark II. I got the Canon G7X Mark II, and I love it, man. Like it flips up deal. And it's great. Same camera, basically. And then sometimes I'll vlog just using my Galaxy. My Galaxy has it's so clear. And do you ever worry about or not? Like when there's a lot of music playing, do you worry about like, oh, hope I don't get copyright with YouTube, or does it? I found ways of working around that. YouTube actually has a function when you upload your video, they'll let you know that you have copyrighted music, but you can also, once they do that, there's a function you can go in there and you can either mute all the audio for that section, or they have a function there where it says mute the music only. Oh. And it will actually go and mute the background music. But sometimes what I do, if I know it's going to be just unavoidable, I just quiet everything and I use the music of my friend's band that I use for my theme songs, and I just use my own music over top of it. Because some stuff you want to film, but you don't have a choice. Some places you go in and like like holiday rides or Halloween haunts and stuff. They're using soundtracks, and you're like, what are you going to do? Say, hey, can you turn your soundtrack off so I can film your thing? It's like, it is what it is. You just got to work with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'll go back and listen to this so I can figure out what you just said. But I think you said there's a part it'll mute only the music portion. Oh, that's great. Because I saw a guy. Yes, I go to a boxing gym here, and they were interviewing Buddy McGirt, a two-time world champion in boxing. He's won many awards, and they were interviewing him. And as they were interviewing him, like the music was still playing, people are still training, and I'm like, how are they going to post this? Like, I don't. But I guess, like you said, there's ways around it, and.
Yeah, sometimes people use lavaliers with the wind muff and stuff, and that sometimes that'll work really well. But for me, I used to go all out and do all that stuff, and in the end, I just kind of realized I wanted to be guerrilla, and the only way to really kind of keep a guerrilla is to keep a constant, which is pick a camera that does 95% or better of what you're trying to do. And the times that it doesn't work, it's just, sometimes you're going to have a windy day and it's going to be audible, and you're like, it is what it is. I mean, it's just nothing can ever be perfect. Sometimes I'll record the audio over for that section if it's too bad. But, for me, it's like, that's the beauty of being on the road and filming stuff, is that sometimes you're going to have stuff like that happen.
Yeah. Do you remember when you're first when you first started doing YouTube, like when you were like, wow, this is actually, I'm starting to get some traction here. Do you remember what that video was?
Yeah. Well, the first, probably on day 5, I went to the Guns N' Roses concert at Dodger Stadium, and I went from the first 4 days worth of videos got 20 views or 30 views from just friends seeing it on my Facebook. And then I post the Guns N' Roses concert. I'm like, wow, how did I get 5,000 views overnight?
Wow. On YouTube.
Yeah, because it was it was a recent event and people were wanting to see the show they missed. So I was like, that was one of those first things I go, wow. So just any random video could probably take fire. And I just started filming all this stuff that I was super interested in. And I was kind of early on in the days, I would go on YouTube and check to make sure nobody else had really done it. And I remember posting, I went to where Bruce Lee's dojo was down in Chinatown, and it was just abandoned, dusty, and filthy. And I went and filmed it. And then all of a sudden I started noticing tons of comments. And it was kind of like what you were saying earlier, how my videos would start with half the video being me and Jaw. Well, that was my foray into YouTube hate, because it was all these people going, I came to see Bruce Lee's dojo. Why did I have to wait till the end? And you're walking your dog and you're walking through Chinatown, and just all these complaints. And you're like, yeah, okay. But that video got 100,000 views in a week. So that was my thing where I go, so the key to this is not to be afraid to do anything I'm interested in, because you never know what that one video is somebody will see that will make them subscribe. So I'm not going to, I immediately said, then I'm not going to limit myself to graves or filming locations. I'm going to do everything I like, because in the end, I want this channel to just be a major reflection of all my interests and getting people into things they may not have known about.
Yeah, that's great. And I've seen your channel grow. I think at one point it was, I think when I started watching you, I want to say it was around 130,000, maybe somewhere in there. It might've been, but I just, for some reason that number sticks out. And then I think I looked last night, and you're well over 200,000 subscribers, which is a lot. I mean, it's just booming, man. It's going up.
And it's tricky too, because even though you have a good audience, you can have a lot of subscribers, what you'll notice over time is that a predominant number of your viewers on every video are not your subscribers. You'll see 60 to 70% of your views will come from YouTube recommending it from another video or something, not your subscribers. Because a lot of times you'll see, especially if you do different stuff, that your subscribers maybe only are interested in 2 out of the 10 things that you vlog, So I've had to, in those regards, take that in consideration also and go okay, I know this one's not going to be for everybody, but how can I try and trick them with a cover that will make them at least give it a chance, because they might like it if they give it a chance. But if they think that they won't like it, they won't even, tap on it. So my goal is always, what can I do to interest them? And so yesterday's video was my grandpa and I going to the Packard Museum, and I had originally made a cover that was the Godfather hearse with Marlon Brando and Al Capone on the cover. And then before I posted the video, I go, everybody likes my grandpa. Let's put my grandpa as the cover. And I bet you more people will click on it just because of him. And sure enough, they did. And Darren, I sent my grandpa a text message that night and said, hey, Papa, you're a real cash cow. You're getting more views than my Elvis video is right now.
That's awesome. Man, they must be so proud of you. And it's they must be confused in a sense, like what that, but they're not at this point.
He was my earliest fan. Darren, that's how I knew this was a good path, because on like day 7, he sent me an email and said, I don't know what these videos that you're posting on your Facebook are, but I really like them because you're taking me somewhere that I'm not going to get to myself, and I get to see what you're up to every day. And so I thought, I go, well, if my grandpa's almost 90 and he is watching stuff on YouTube, other people are going to figure it out. And as long as he's watching, then I must be on to something. And I just put my nose to the grindstone, just said, I'm going to do a video every day. And I'm going to think of it like music royalties, that if I can just stay focused and keep making what I want, at some point, all these old videos will give me 25 cents a month towards my living expenses or whatever it turns out to be. And eventually all the stuff that I've done over my life will not only be documented for other people, places that are gone or whatever, but I will get to live out all my fantasies on camera and just do all that, make a living off of it just by little old video monetization.
You're right, because every January or every August, when people are thinking about Elvis more than normal, there might be like, oh, let me type in, and then all of a sudden, here you are, you went to Graceland and you interviewed Ginger, and
oh man, talk about, things that have opportunities that have come from doing this channel that would have never came otherwise. I got hired to do a behind the scenes day on a Paul Stanley video shoot with Wayne Isham, and Wayne Isham's made like some of the biggest music videos of all time, from Bon Jovi to NSYNC to the Metallica Black album. And I'm sitting there telling him what I do. He's going like, so what, how do you make a living? And I go, well, I like make these videos everywhere in the world that I want. And he's just sitting there going like, good for you, And so it's like kind of cool, like things like that, where Ginger, somebody that is close to her just contacted me one day and said, Ginger likes how respectful you've been to her in your videos, and would be interested in doing an interview if you would like, over the phone. I was like, heck yeah. As an Elvis fan, that's what you want, is to ask the person that was last with him, just tell me what the real Elvis was like from your perspective, not what I keep hearing from people that think they know, or people that were a fifth cousin of somebody. You hear that all the time, My aunt was a fifth cousin of Sally Mae Presley, and she told me that, so it was just like, for me, I always have found Ginger to be kind of reputable, because for 40 years, she kept her mouth. She didn't feel a need to defend herself or make money off of him or anything like that. And she still kept like her engagement ring and all that stuff. So when I got to talk to her, I just said, I said, Ginger, I'm going to ask you things, and just know I'm coming from a place of respect. There, even if the question as I ask it may seem strange, or like I'm going down a dark road or something, trust me that I'm not going to try and make you look bad in anything, because I know people that do this kind of stuff, that's what you get views on, are salacious stories and things like that. And I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to preserve cool people's history and make other people be like kind of fascinated, or not be afraid to go live a little bit crazier than they have before,
Right. Did you ever get to the point during the darkest days of the pandemic, when there was like things are shut, especially in LA? California, it was like, we basically like would spend a lot of time at the family farm up north, about 3 hours north of LA, so that's what I'm saying. I know that, that, Burbank to Fresno, I know that 99 drive very well. And it was great to get it, because I just was like, all right, I want to ride my bike, play with my son outside. We want to, when they were kicking people off the beach, and they were like, I was like, what? And then closing the parks down. There was a time where I'm like, I was like, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone and be creative and figure out a way. Luckily, as a stand-up, we have these little thumb drives so I can look through old footage and recreate clips or stuff. But as far as vlogging, did you ever have those days where you're like, dang, what am I going to record today? Or you're like, nope, I got 20 great ideas. What's up, guys? How you like the show so far? Pretty good, right? Kind of weird that I'm out here in the country with the chair next to me. But anyways, if you like the show and you want to help out, go to CAMEO. I do birthday shout outs, anniversary shout outs, or if you just want to do a donation, go to darrencarter.com, PayPal, or Venmo at Darren Carter Comic. Now let's get back to the show.
Surprisingly, it was the latter. When this all started, I remember having a conversation with my best friend, and he was saying, he goes, you're going to be lucky if this becomes like a serious situation because you're very adaptable with what you vlog. And I remember thinking that and going, you know what, he's right. I can get away with going and vlogging a house in the middle of nowhere, or an apartment where nobody else around, or a cemetery or something like that. And that was a good way of keeping my distance from other people. The problem then became, Darren, that the cemeteries were closing. And they started sending out notices like, unless you had family there, you weren't allowed in the cemeteries. So,
wow.
So what I ended up doing then, it's almost like a stroke of luck, man.
Yeah.
My best friend is the drummer of Kiss. And since there were no concerts, he was at home and he had just bought a house in Vegas and had no furniture. And so he said, hey, why don't you come and hang out with me in Vegas? Because everything is still kind of open here. And we'll just wear a mask and we'll hit vintage shops and vlog some of the stuff around here. So that's what I did. And I would just, and then once I got there, of course, his friends turned out to be like, oh, well, this guy's best friend is Debbie Reynolds' son's wife. So now you're going to go over and you're going to meet Todd Fisher and you're going to vlog Debbie Reynolds' collection of memorabilia. And then tomorrow. So it was, people have seen me do this so much that
that's cool. They
know how much I love it. And they don't try and tell me what to do, but they'll go, hey, if you're interested, I can call so-and-so and see if they'll let you come vlog this. And so that's what that's a lot of times what happened during the pandemic was just rolling with it, and opportunities still kept presenting themselves.
It's funny, like just like a joke, when a joke doesn't work when you first start out, like I kind of realized also with the vlog, like I got to ask you, I'll tell you my story real quick with the vlog that bombs or doesn't do well. I thought it was really interesting. This is so your low times were actually pretty good. You're in Vegas, Debbie Reynolds. I mean, mine were like when I'm at a farm, I'm like, what's on the farm? What can I vlog? And I actually saw a spider wrap up a bee with a cobweb, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. I've never seen that. So I filmed it and I put it up, and I haven't looked in a long time, but it was pretty much stuck at 25 views. And even my son was like, Dad, you're a comedian. This isn't a nature channel. But I'm like, no, man, this is my passion. I'm going to make anyways, that one pretty much bombed. I haven't even looked at it. Maybe it's blown up. I doubt it, but no one cares about a spider and a bee apparently. But
well, sometimes it's how you title things, as sad as it is, or the cover that you give it. And my theory was always like, I'm not going to ever be embarrassed or ashamed of anything that I post, because if I've prepared it to post, there's a reason. And I'll tell you one that I got a lot, so much so that I lost a lot of subscribers like the day I posted it. Yeah, it was I went to Minneapolis and I was vlogging like Prince's house and like the Purple Rain filming locations and grumpy old men, everything. But the elephant in the room was that where George Floyd's incident happened was there. And I went there and I filmed a walkthrough of it, and I didn't say a word. I didn't give any commentary. I just showed what was there. And you'd be amazed at how many people went to other videos, because I turned the comments off, just because I started out by saying, this is not political. This is not a political video. This is historical. this is what this is like now. And man, I had somebody actually go on PayPal and send me a nickel so that they could rip me a new one for posting such an apologist, and I mean, and I remember getting a phone call from Lunell, if you know Lunell, comedian Lunell.
Oh, I know Lunell.
And she said to me, she said, that is, you drew a line in the sand today, because what you did was you showed that you're not afraid to veer away from history. And that's important. She said, and you did it the right way by not saying a word. You just showed the environment and you showed what it was. And so that's when I always say, like, it's like 10,000 views. I don't apologize for it, because like I said, it was historical. And now that whole section has been torn down and cleaned up. They don't have the memorial park there. None of that is there. So now it's a moment in history that's captured. And that's why I do it. It's never, I don't do anything out of a political agenda or trying to influence other people to think the way I am. I honestly could care less how people, whether they agree with me or not. I go with my grandpa, where it's like, the world is a cool place because people are different, and you should be allowed to be yourself unapologetically, even if you're an awful person, because it shows the rest of us whether we want or don't want you in our life, so that's how I always just viewed things like that. I'm like, I'm not going to apologize for what I post on my channel. I like what I post, and I feel like everybody should be doing that on theirs. Like, it should be a reflection of you.
Yeah. My son made a joke. He was like, because I also, you're right. I like to do, a variety of things. And one of them is I really enjoy fitness and seeing how, I keep my little, my daily push-ups and sit-ups. And it's nice to, like you said, you get the feedback. People, some people will bust my chops like, oh, but it's still, I know that I've gotten those messages where people are like, hey, I was fat and sad, and then I kept seeing your stuff and it was pissing me off. But I was like, one day I said, I'm going to start it. And they actually started their own thing, and they send them to me. And I'm like, great. Because I'm doing it to help others, but also to help myself. Because if I put the stuff out there, it keeps me accountable to where I'm like, time to do it. Although my son did make a funny joke. He goes, Dad, nobody wants to see a comedian do push-ups. He's like, what if I saw the Beatles and Paul McCartney? He's like, go to my YouTube channel. And then you go there and he's like doing, like, you know what I mean? Like deep knee bends and jumping. Yeah.
See, I disagree because I think people, for lack of a better term, I think when we were younger, you used to actually be able to look up to like political figures and people in the media as someone to look up to and to be inspired by, but I don't feel like that's the case anymore. So I do feel like people gravitate towards your like I told you earlier, I gravitated towards podcasts in the early days. So I was like listening to Beauty and the Beast with Joey and Felicia. And was like, and that's honestly what I looked forward to. I was like, they do 2 episodes a week. What am I going to do in between those days? Because like they're my friends. And I realized soon, like people, if you let them into your life a little bit, that's what breaks you apart from just being just another person in the crowd. They get to know that you have a heart and a soul. And I think personally, that's the key to Joey Diaz's success, is that once he started showing people his soul off stage, I think people they found out they loved him. They just they love the guy. And now it's like, even if he's not in your city, people support him because Uncle Joey is Uncle Joey, and you want to know he's out there spitting the good knowledge and like motivating people. And he's who I learned, make lists, like set goals for yourself. And that's what I did. Every time people would say, are you ever afraid you'll run out of ideas for vlogs? No way. Because every time I think of something, I write it down. So I have 5 or 6 pages worth of yellow legal pads that I have to work off of. And like when I think of somewhere outside of the city I'm in, I go on Google Maps and I save it on there so that when I get to that area, I open up and I go, oh, cool. I've pinned all this stuff that's around here I want to see. It's like, because of him, setting goals was a big thing for this channel.
I got to do Joey Diaz's podcast twice, and hopefully I'll get to do the new one. Oh, did you really? I got to go back and listen, man. It's I got to tell you, because Joey, like you said, he is, he motivates you because, and one of the things he I know he's told me this, but he also has said it on the podcast before, where it's like, he goes, one time I was watching like boxing and you don't really know who the two guys are, but once they show you behind the scenes and you find out he has a daughter, he came from,
you got somebody to root for.
Right. Exactly. And so that's where I feel like, especially nowadays, man, like, I did the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and it was an honor and it was great, but it's like, it's on, and then maybe they show it one more time. I don't know. It's like, it's a big deal. It was a really big deal. And it was a great accomplishment, but it just kind of goes away. But these phones, I mean, like you said, you're always able to shoot stuff and people are constantly looking down. I mean, we have a whole TV studio right here in our pocket. And as you know, and it's like, especially for a comic, to be able to, if I'm just, back in the day, I'd go to a town, make people laugh, and it was just done. I may not even get booked there again, or it may take me a year or two to come back. But now, like you said, that's why I call it pocket party, because I figure, hey, every time, you just, bam, there's a party in your pocket. Today I got Jordan the Lion,
Well, I always said, when they canceled Roseanne, when Roseanne got kicked off her show, I was always saying, I'm like, that's sad, because if she were on YouTube, her fans would get to decide whether she was canceled off the show or not. And I watched, there's a musician that I'm a fan of who they've tried to cancel. And I'm watching this guy, kind of rebuild himself on Instagram. And he spends, every night live streaming, and he's painting and he's drawing, and he's talking about like, this is my 13th week of sobriety. I'm out jogging every day. He's just telling you how he's getting through everything that he's went through during this, of just, having his livelihood taken away, having places don't want to book him or whatever. And you're going like, this is great, because then he's painting these pictures and he goes, hey, like, I'm going to go ahead and release a box set of this, one of his popular albums. He goes, and I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of art in there, and I'm going to draw these. And man, they flew off. Literally, I tried to buy one. He announced when they were going on sale. I clicked on there and I couldn't even get my credit card information in there to buy it before they were sold out.
Wow.
So for me, that was like one of those things. I'm like, that's so cool to see that someone can make mistakes in their life, try and redeem themselves, and that their fans will say, dude, I got your back. I'll support what you're doing, because I'm not going to let other people decide that your career's over, and for me, that's always been super important, is let people decide for themselves whether they care about you or not. And this platform, you're self-employed. Right. So don't piss off the YouTube censors, and I don't think that's, if you're just a normal person not looking for shock value, it's very easy to respect their guidelines.
Absolutely. It's right. It's I respect the guidelines, and even when I have guests on that tend to use a lot of foul language, I tell them, let's just keep it, you know what I mean? And they usually understand, and I guess, like if they do it like, deep into the podcast, it probably doesn't, I think they just don't want you cursing right off the bat. Right.
Dude, they actually have a thing on there, because I had somebody on who was a New York guy who cussed throughout there. And when I was they ask you when you're uploading the video, like, does this have cursing? And I put, yes, it does. Well, then they take you to a subfolder that says, is it within the first minute? And is it more than 5 times during during this part? And it had like a specific time length. And if it didn't fall in there, then they would still honor it. Because I think they think that the people that watch their attention span is only like 3 minutes. So I think they figure as long as you're not doing it the first couple of minutes, then they can still give you, monetization. Because I was surprised by that. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, yeah, it's not happening in the first minute, so we're safe there.
Yeah, you're like, come on, Jaw, let's go for a walk. All right, enough of that. Hey guys, we got this foul-mouthed New Yorker.
This is the guy, Darren. I got a guy on that's from Staten Island telling me, where bodies were buried from, and so it's stuff like that. And he's cussing and telling stories like that. And you're like, you're taking people on a ride, with these vlogs. And for me, it was like, part of the ride in being in New York is meeting a New Yorker. And this is a New Yorker. So I try not to cuss on my vlogs. I always say, I'm like, unless I'm repeating a quote out of a movie, I don't cuss, but I'm not going to censor the people on mine. What they say, especially if I ask them to be on there, I know what I'm getting. When I have Sam Tripoli on, I know what I'm going to get, So
right. That's amazing. You know, when I started my podcast, I remember like it was so cool because I felt like I was just learning every week or two. I'm like, oh, I can try this, I can try that. And, you know, I bought like this oversized like fanny pack. That way I could have the recorder, the microphone. That way I could just whip it out and like start doing like man on the street type stuff and or whatever. Like you learn all these little things. Like what are some of the things you've learned through the course of your career with YouTube and stuff, like as far as technology or ideas or this is so exciting, blah blah blah, that kind of thing?
Well, I'm kind of really into Ray-Ban has now put out cameras in glasses.
Oh,
and they're actually good quality. Up till now, you know, recording anything like maybe on a roller coaster or a motorcycle and stuff, it's hard to get good footage. And so that's kind of one of those things I'm looking at getting, because I want to just experiment with it. I'm so used to seeing the world through my little lens, like, you know, my little view screen. I kind of want to see what it looks like through the glasses and everything again. But as far as like the other stuff, I try not to let the trends affect a good story. And so I always, because like you mentioned earlier, you would see Casey Neistat and you hear all these music beds. Well, I don't do any of that. Because I realized soon, I'm like, the music beds are just because you don't have anything to say. So if I don't have anything to say, then I probably shouldn't have anything filmed right there, you know?
Right.
And I always use anecdotes that I've learned or different things people told me, because I think that's part of what makes the channel interesting too, is, you know, one day just being out at the dog park and then going, hey, I'm going to tell you guys a crazy story that Joey Diaz told me once. He said, if your bank account gets low, you should throw your wallet away, because your wallet is now cursed and that you need to start from scratch. And I go, well, my wallet I'm throwing that sucker away today. And you know, and that's kind of like I would get into like some story or whatever and tell like, you know, just something that had happened or whatever. And people love that. And then of course, then you get people looking for Joey and and that was also part of it. I'm like, God, I want to turn people on to cool comedians and cool painters and artists and just all the mediums that I love. That should be really like what this is all about, is turning people on to other good art that's for like-minded people, not just going, watch my channel. I'm not going to tell you about anybody else because I don't want you to go support them. I don't want you to join their Patreon or any of that stuff. I'm like, there's room enough for everyone if you're just unique and true to yourself. You know, if you're an entertainer, people will see it or want to see it.
You know, it's funny, man. I remember when I was, I did stand up on BET, and also, you know, several times I was on a sketch show. One time we had this meeting, and one of the comics was saying, hey, we could get together outside of BET and make our own sketches. And I love this phrase he said. He goes, because, you know, with one, we're a finger, but with five, we're a fist. I'm like, that's good. You know,
that's true.
And then I also recently did I performed at a church. And the pastor, he said something I liked. He said that how we need each other. He said, you can't whistle a symphony. You need an orchestra. And I'm like, that's another good one, man. That's so like you said, you know, giving each other shout outs, having each other on, mentioning each other. I remember one time I did a guy's podcast and I just casually mentioned how I'd heard something recently on Joe Rogan's. And this is like 2 years ago. And he goes, we don't mention other people's podcasts, you know, like as if people are going to, what? Joe Rogan has a podcast? I got to go look for it. You know,
no kidding.
It's like, you know, it's so silly. You know, I mean,
my thing is I just go, I'm not going to like kowtow to, like, I'm not going to have other creators on that I don't care for. That's the one thing, like, that's my thing is I'm like, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but unless I really respect what you're doing, that's when I want to have you. Like, you probably don't know this, but I've actually had been to your show back in like 2005. That's how Kevin Couch, a good friend of mine. Kevin Couch,
I know Kevin Couch. Yeah.
Took me to one of your shows at the Improv, and dude, that's how I found your podcast. You know, that's how. So
cool.
So that's why I say, like, I don't ever do these kind of shows or anything other than I've done one with Sam, because I really I only want to do the shows with people that I respect what they're doing. And Sam, as crazy as Sam is, I totally respect Sam Tripoli to death with what he's doing, because that was what I always saw in him. I was always seeing him like, dude, you put on these great shows, you put on the Naughty Show and everything, but like nobody outside the Comedy Store, I feel like really gets that experience of who you really are. And he just, man, once he thought of what YouTube, the possibilities, he unleashed the beast, and just everything that he's interested in, he talks about, regardless, the consequences.
Yeah. I have a question for you. This is, man, by the way, I'd love to have you on again and again. I mean, I love our, I love what you're doing. I know right now I'm diving deep into the YouTube world, but I'm just so fascinated and interested in what you've been able to do. Cause
worries.
It must
we
be.
can talk Waltons another time.
No, I don't think I'm going to be talking Waltons anytime soon. The All Waltons podcast. It's great to go to sleep.
It's podcast.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that'd be fun. So that's the thing. I also feel like so much about pop culture and like I was intimidated, when I first started doing this, but I realized you got to get past that fear because, I'd hear guys like Mike Black, like he knows all the details of certain movies and TV care. But then I just, I'm going to have him on. And if he knows about stuff, he'll talk about it and I'll just listen like a student. I didn't want it to be, out of my realm, but it doesn't matter. That's why I'm telling people sometimes get out there and see what happens and you're going to be fine.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing, is like when I was telling you I was trying to do stand-up comedy, and I remember having coffee with Ian Edwards one day and telling him, I'm like, man, I feel like I should do stand-up. And like the whole time he's sitting across from me, like big smile on his face, just like listening to me. And for 10 minutes, I'm telling him why I should do stand-up. And then he just goes, so just go do it. You're giving me all these reasons why you should do it. Just go do it, Jordan. He goes, because I'll tell you actually, I'll tell you two things. Either you'll love it and you'll want to do it more, or you won't like it and you won't want to do it anymore. But he goes, one of two things is going to happen. He goes, just go out and do it as much as you can and you'll find out, So that's what I did with this. Is I said, I'm going to go out and make mistakes. I'm going to, I know stuff. I'll say stuff in videos in the first year that I'm regretting 5 years later, or, I'll say, oh, I don't like that band, or I don't like that movie, I don't like that show. And then over the years, something's happened where I got into it, and then I have to go, well, now I am into that. So it's stuff that I was, because that stuff happens. You just do, you find, especially doing this, all the traveling, I'll be somewhere and all of a sudden, like I didn't really have an opinion on Waylon Jennings. And then all of a sudden one day I'm driving through Texas, I'm listening to Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson's song called I Can Get High Off You. And something hit me and I go, I gotta go. Where's this guy from? And I'm like, Littlefield, that's 8 hours from here. Let's just drive there right now. I gotta go see his museum. And for 8 hours, I'm listening to Waylon Jennings. And it was like, just a life-changing moment. And I wear a Waylon Jennings ring now.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where you go like, it was just perfect timing, perfect moment, perfect emotions that I was going through. And it gave me something new that I never thought I would be into. And now it's a huge part of my life. Man, it's speaking of Waylon, I remember, growing up, I would hear, like the Dukes of Hazzard theme song, and I would hear certain songs and like Highwayman. Huge fan.
Right. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like you'd hear it, but then my wife and I really got into Waylon, I don't know, like 15 years ago, whatever it was, 20 years ago. And I remember thinking like, wow, why wasn't this guy even bigger than Johnny Cash? I mean, I love Johnny Cash, but it's like, you know what I mean? Waylon is so good too, as well,
I know he's one of those that when people go like Elvis or Waylon, I'm like, there's like, they just have to ride neck and neck for me because they were equally cool in their own ways, in so many ways. I mean, and back to what we were saying, like the stories that you can, if you go watch Mike Judge's Tales from the Tour Bus show. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or seen that, but he has a series called Tales from the Tour Bus, and season 1 was country stories. And he has a phenomenal Waylon Jennings and George Jones stories in there that if you didn't like their music, you would be a fan of them afterward and you would force yourself to like their music.
Dude, that's what I'm saying, man. Like if you like Waylon Jennings, you just do a vlog on it. You go to 8 hours, you look at them, you get into it, not thinking I got to follow what the vlogger of the day is or the flavor of the month. You're like, no, I like this.
And you're not doing it to be cool. Like it's like, who are you going to win over by saying I got into Waylon Jennings today? You know what I mean? But you get, it's it makes you feel desperado in a way, Darren. Like you're on these open roads and you're just like, you become one with this moment of being on the road and the music and everything. And it's just one of those things that you can't describe to people because it's not a vacation, but you just say like, you don't get it until you're away from your phone, away from your TV, living that life a little bit. You kind of, I don't know. It's just I think it's one of those things everybody should do. Everybody owes themselves a cross-country drive because you think some people go like, oh, I can't even handle a 2-hour car ride. Think of just the things that you're going to see and the thoughts you have. And I mean, it's life-changing.
And those car rides are a lot different when there's no traffic. I mean, a 2-hour car ride, which I have to do today, I have to drive down to Anaheim. I'm like, ugh. But when you're on the open road, it's like the best.
Back roads, take back highways and stuff like that. I mean, I can't even tell you the crazy things that I've seen people create in their yards on these back roads to where you're like, oh my, like I was leaving West Virginia like 2 weeks ago and I'm like driving, all of a sudden I go, is that guy building a castle? It looks like literally like he's building a castle. And sure enough, as I get up there, it's a castle. And then out in the front of the yard, he's got like some Pee-wee's Playhouse looking stagecoach where like the wheels are all kind of crazy. And then you start seeing he's got animals that he created that look like Picasso. And I go, okay, I got to take this path, come back here in like a month and see where this house is at. And then go and find this guy.
Did you film it or did you film it or did you ask him or talk?
I just marked it on my Google Maps and I go, I'll take this route another time and I want to see where he's at and then try and stop in and meet this guy.
Are people usually
never found it otherwise?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I was gonna ask, are people usually pretty cool about that when you're, hey, I saw you have this stuff in your yard. Can I talk to you about it? Or
I've gotten pretty good at knowing how to approach people. And because when you have a camera, everybody is worried about what you're up to.
Right.
So
exactly.
I just did the Kingpin filming locations and I'm out there filming where Woody Harrelson's apartment is. And I'm getting like a shot from across the street. And all of a sudden, one of the guys who lives in the building, like his friend had shown up because he's moving out that day. So this guy's like, they're starting to haul furniture out and they're looking at me like, what are you doing? And I go, oh, I'm just doing a filming location video. And it dawns on me, I go, this guy could be moving out because he's having a lawsuit with his landlord and he might think I work for the landlord. You just never know. So sometimes I just go, it's better to just tell him what I'm doing right up front and get it out of the way. And a lot like that same day, I go to like one of the old bowling alleys from the movie and it was all like dilapidated and everything and the door was kicked open. And I'm over there like filming it, looking at it. And the moment my camera battery dies, I look over and there's a police officer driving by. So I just had to go in because I knew what he was going to do. He was going to ask me what I'm doing. And I go, well, I'm doing a filming location for Kingpin. And the police officer goes, oh, wow, that's crazy. I actually was one of the officers they hired for security that night when they filmed that scene.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's cool.
I mean, otherwise, you got people, because if he showed up, he's going, why is your car parked around back? Yeah. And then, and for him, he's going, why is that? And I'll go, well, because I'm trying to keep my car out of the shot. But to them, if you don't tell them what you're doing, all of your excuses, they're thinking something else. Doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. But luckily you could be like, here's my YouTube channel. This is what I do. Hopefully
Totally.
Do you, have you done any meetups yet with your fans? Like, hey guys, we're going to meet at this date, this place, boom. What was your,
I went international, dude. I did one in Sydney, Australia. I did one in London. I did one in Pigeon Forge, one in Long Beach. We did one at the Queen Mary when I still lived in there, and then we did one at Hulk Hogan's Beach Shop in Orlando. Oh, so cool. I try about twice a year to do a meetup somewhere to where. Do you remember
your first one? Do you remember your first one and like how many people you thought would show up and how many showed up and does numbers matter? Like what was that whole? Yeah. Who? Two
people. Well, to be fair, my first meetup was on Christmas Day in Los Angeles because I couldn't afford to fly home. So Quentin Tarantino was showing his movie not Inglourious Bastards, The Hateful Eight, because he considers that a Christmas movie because they play Silent Night on the piano in the movie. So
Oh,
I had heard this was going on. I bought a ticket and then posted on my channel, hey, if anybody is in the area and wants to meet me doesn't have anything to do on Christmas night, go ahead. So I show up and I get in line, and there is like 2 people in line that were there to see me, and they were way up in the line. So by the time they open the line up and I get in there, I see where they're sitting. I go, well, that'd be kind of cool of me to sit behind them, right?
yeah.
So I end up sitting right behind them, not noticing that right beside me were 2 chairs that were taped off.
Oh,
And I just didn't even think of why they would be taped off. They were like handicap chairs, but they had a piece of tape across them letting you know nobody's to sit there. So I just sat beside that chair, and sure enough, Quentin Tarantino sat right next to me for the movie.
whoa.
So the fans that came to meet me ended up sitting right in front, and I have a pretty infectious laugh. I have kind of like a Burt Reynolds laugh, and I really get going. And I kept laughing at everything Kurt Russell was doing in the movie. And we get to the intermission, and as soon as the lights go up, Tarantino turns over to me and he goes, "You are the only person I've watched this with that actually laughs at the right parts. This is great." and he gets up and he goes off somewhere, like to get a drink or something. And the fans sitting in front of me turn around and go, "Dude, every time you laughed, it was a trigger for him." And he was laughing. He was the guy in front of me goes, "This was like the coolest night to watch a movie ever." Cause he's like, I mean, like you and Quentin should be just hanging out all the time because you're both laughing through the whole thing.
That's so
That was one
cool.
of those things I got to vlog. I'm like, in that early vlog, it's like, hey, look who I'm watching the movie with. And I just tilt the camera and you can see Tarantino sitting right next to me. So
That's awesome.
yeah, that
That's
was the first meetup of 2 people.
What a heck of a way to start, man. It's like,
Dude, I've had so many things happen to where in doing this channel that I always just went like, I feel like God sends me so many signs that I'm doing the right thing.
yeah.
And it's things like these little things like that. You know what I mean? Opportunities that pop up or people that I randomly meet. I always just go like, if you keep your eyes open, I really do feel like God sends you signs in your life of like directions to go. When you're ready to make a change, sometimes you feel like you're down and out, and sometimes one little change, for me, it was like I had an audition. Like I was telling you, I couldn't get auditions and didn't feel like my agency was getting me anywhere. And then one day I had an audition, and the lady goes, "I can't believe I've never seen you. You're great. I liked you right away. I don't know why I've never seen you in here. I see people from your agency all the time." And I said, "How do I change that?" And she said, "If I were you, I'd start something on YouTube, do a web series or do something, because you're likable. Use your own personality and just see what happens." That was the best advice I ever got, because once this thing took off, I fired my agent. I fired my manager. I just go, "I don't need you. I don't want to do any auditions anymore. I want to just keep doing this, and I don't need you for that." So
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I mean, you're the star of your vlogs. I mean, and also where you're going, but you know what I mean. It's like, as opposed to like, here's my 2 lines, here's your pizza. I mean, back to what Steve Simone said, you're driving around putting money in meters. You're able to create these shows every day if you want,
And they're sending, just to even get your foot in the door in acting, you're auditioning for tons of things that you have no interest in. And after a while, you go 3 years of auditioning to be a police officer that has no lines or has 2 lines in an independent movie. And you go, what am I doing this for? Like, really, what, if it's not fun, what is this for? Like, I got into it because I thought it would be fun. If it's not fun, then that's a sign that you're in the wrong spot.
Yes. I kind of want to tell one story. No, you know what? Let's save it for next time.
Okay.
The apartment story. We'll save it for next time. I love that story, but you know what I'm talking about? Well, I want to save that one for next time. Are there, do you have any words of wisdom, anything during this Christmas season, New Year's season, going into the new year? You know what I mean? Anything, any words of wisdom, something you've learned along the way that you could help our viewers and listeners?
The same thing I always say to people is just don't be afraid to do something with your life. It's like, I always call it the Scrooged moment. It's never too late to change the course of your life. But the problem is only one person can do that. And it's you. And if you're not willing to do it, then nothing will change. But I always think, if you change one thing, you have a domino effect. You all of a sudden you writing down your push-ups and stuff. It's like you start seeing little things make a difference. Start with little things in your life until you are happy. Because I got to a point where I was like, I knew that there was no job that I could think of that would make me happy except for just traveling and not having someone tell me what to do. And I kept going, how do you find a job like that? You can't find a job like that. So you just have to create a job like that. And then it took me probably a year and a half to where I could live off of the income from the ads and stuff on my channel. And I never looked back. So if you can give yourself, a goal and be working towards that goal every day, you're surprised sometimes of what you can accomplish for yourself. I think people don't give themselves enough credit of what they're able to do, and they fall too much into, I'm expected to do this, and they don't do what they want to do.
Very good. Very good. I'm curious, you came out to LA to do music, pursue music. Do you still play music? Do you still create music?
I do, but I don't record it or anything like that. I don't have any ambitions of having a band. I just, it's one of those things. I had all that for years. I made records, and then what happened, crazy enough, was that a friend of mine got everything I wanted. He got on the 2 record labels I always dreamed of being on. He got to tour with all the bands that I ever dreamed of. And then when he'd come visit me in Los Angeles, he would stink to high heaven because he'd say, well, we only bathe like twice a week because we can only, if we spend money on the road to stay in a hotel, that takes away from the money when we're not touring. So I just started seeing what they were going through, and I go, wow, what I thought was my dream, I would hate. And that would have turned me away from wanting to do any of that. So when my band members just kind of like were, they all got real jobs. We were all at that point where we were old enough, and one became an accountant, and one was like some sort of local vice president of Under Armour. And you just go, these guys have real careers. They don't have the ambition I do. And it made me, in a weird way, it sent me down a few years of doing nothing. But in the end, I think I would have hated music if I would have kept forcing myself to try and make it work in an unnatural way. And now I can still appreciate and enjoy all that, but I get to do something much different, without the stress of, like, now I would hate it because you can't even make money being a musician really anymore. Like, nobody wants to pay for concert tickets, and nobody wants to buy, songs, or, everybody wants everything to be free. So I always feel bad for musicians.
Do you, I know, do you play instruments? Do you sing? What was your music?
Yeah, I was the songwriter, singer, guitar player. I went to Musicians Institute when I first moved out here, and then a guy who was in my class became my best friend, and he wanted to be a recording engineer. So he said, oh, you have great songs. I'll record you anytime you want. And we formed a band. And to this day, he's my best friend, but he's now my accountant. And he's in the world of accounting for the major movie production company. So he has to know all the entertainment laws and what's legitimate and everything. So for what I do, it makes it, so much of what I do is it makes it like tax deductible, because it's like a business, but it's also, filming a TV show, So he helps me keep everything legitimate and make sure that I'm, doing things the right way legally.
Right.
That's how people always fall apart, is, falling, forgetting to do things or not crossing the T's and dotting the I's. He does all that stuff for me. So he's still my best friend and biggest fan.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, Jordan, I want to thank you for giving us a small part of your day, and I want you to have a great rest of your day. And
Thanks,
let's get you back on soon. And man, do you have any of your cool sunglasses handy? Like could you put them on? I love when you do that.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I have a pair. Let me grab a special pair I have on display right over here.
Okay. That sounds good, man. Jordan the Lion. As well, he's doing that. I'll use my back scratcher.
These are my They Live Roddy Piper autographed sunglasses.
Wow.
Roddy used to hang at the Comedy Store a lot. And that was one of my favorite nights of my life, was walking into a dead Comedy Store with one person in the crowd and one person on stage. And I made a comment to the friend who was on stage, and he goes, the person in the crowd starts laughing, and I hear, "Even you're going to laugh at me, Roddy?" And I couldn't believe it was Roddy Piper. And I went over and I said, "Sir, I've wanted to meet you my whole life." And he said, "As soon as he's done, I'll be outside to spend some time with you." And he every time he came to the store, Darren, he would sit and give you life lessons, like literally, like he was like a prophet. So that was, I always feel like that was one of the biggest things I took from the Comedy Store, was getting life advice from Roddy Piper. And then when he passed, we had a memorial for him there, and I got to go to that. So I had this right over there by the glasses. That was.
Wow.
Yeah.
I met him a few times there as well. Through our buddy Steve Simone, and I met him at Meltdown Comics. I got to do warm up for their podcast, and man, you're right. It was, he would treat you like gold, man. Like he would treat you like an old friend and just give like sage advice. And I was, shocked. He was just like we all were,
very fatherly. And I'll never forget one of my favorite moments also was, like I said, I used to hang out at the Comedy Store right before it had its rebirth, right? Basically people that are in the know, it's when Tommy was still the booker there, and it was pretty sparse there. The main room, they didn't have shows in the main room. And I remember one night walking in late on like a Sunday and walking in the main room and seeing Roddy playing piano on that grand piano that used to be on the stage. And I went and sat in a booth and I just watched him, listened, didn't bother anything, and then looked across the room and I saw Tony Hinchcliffe sitting in a booth on the other side doing the same thing I was. We just kind of like locked eyes. We're like, we have a private Roddy Piper moment concert right here. And it was an original song that Roddy wrote. He's just playing this slow, and he told us, he said, that's where I learned to play. All of his nights at the Comedy Store and that piano up there, he learned how to play piano on that. So it was really sad when I heard they took that away.
Dang. I know, man. But we're back, and I want to thank you for these great stories. And Jordan, like I said, have a great day. Thank you again. Happy holidays, happy New Year, and give my best to everybody. And I'm looking forward to watching you on YouTube soon. And
thank you, and thank you for having me on. It's very nice to meet all your viewers, listeners, and it's nice to know that I snuck in one of those weeks where Mike Black wasn't available.
Yeah. We're gonna plan
when you do podcasts with Mike Black. I think you guys have a great rapport. I love him.
Thank you. He's so good, and I love his slow storytelling, but he's really quick-witted at the same time.
He's the best. I'm a big fan of Mike Black's. Yeah.
I know you're a very positive guy, and I think what we're going to do, Mike Black, I just thought of this right now. We also are going to do a meetup with our fans, and we're going to do it New Year's Eve. We're going to watch the Waltons. And I'm just kidding. Can you imagine competing with New Year's Eve? And
Mike's going to be making his Thanksgiving sandwiches, his big home sandwiches.
And we're watching the Waltons on a phone. We're like, nobody showed up. I don't know why. That'd be like the most boring New Year's, but hey, you're the best, George. Hey, I'll see you soon. Thank you again.
My pleasure, man. Great to see you.
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye-bye.
We're done with this interview.
Everybody listen to Darren Carter. We all know he's the party starter. So if you want to listen to a podcast for free, then listen to The Pocket Party.